They say the moment you first feel the job change isn't in a coronation chair or a balcony wave, it's on a strip of grass when the rotors calm and the cameras find you first. The wind rolled over Windsor Stone, hats tugged, uniforms gleamed, and there they were, William and Catherine, at the foot of the helicopter steps, the opening chord of a visit tuned to the millisecond. The president reached for William's hand with that quick, familiar slap. He turned to the Princess of Wales and offered praise as bright as the afternoon. She absorbed it with that polished warmth she's learned to deploy like soft armor, eyes steady, smile calibrated, poise unbroken, and then she did the hardest part of the entire day. She moved the moment along. A gentle lead across the lawn, the conversation flowing without spilling, a glance that said this way, a touch that said we're on time. It looked effortless because it had to. The truth under the gold and the trumpets is simpler and heavier, whether she likes it or not. This is Catherine's future, more first handshakes, more opening beats, more state visits that arrive like weather fronts and demand that she hold the sky steady. The gown, the tiara, the glow under candelabra, those are the photographs. The responsibility is everything the camera can't pick up, the tact that prevents a compliment from becoming the story, the social wiring that keeps a volatile guest charmed but not indulged, the sixth sense for where the next lens is waiting and how to keep it hungry without feeding it chaos. You do not learn that in a day. You learn it by degrees, and you prove it in wind. There was a reason the palace's choreography pushed her to the front of the welcome and placed her beside the guest of honor at dinner. When a visit is politically charged, the crown deploys what it trusts most, continuity with a human face. Catherine's face has become the safe voltage in weeks like this, recognizable, admired, trained to show warmth without surrender. You could see the calculation in the seating plan, in the way the cameras settled on her line before they panned to the toasts. Daunting, as one veteran observer put it, undersells the job. You're asked to be memorable and neutral in the same breath. You must keep a conversation lively while never generating a sentence that will be litigated in the morning. You must seem flattered without looking captured. It is a paradox only a few can carry for hours at a stretch. She carried it. People call it glamour. In the trade, it's containment. The gold lace that read like a love letter to British craftsmanship wasn't just spectacle, it was a message about where attention should live on the country's talent, not on any passing drama. The tiara with the deep history anchored the silhouette in tradition so the whispers would have nowhere to roost. The orders and sashes told a second story without words, continuity, service, a woman who understands she is part of a system that must outlast fashion. You could read the strategy in the details the way musicians read key signatures. Everything served the same aim: raise the room, lower the temperature, make the night feel inevitable. And when the night moved into its most delicate passages, the mingling between courses, the conversational triangulations down a table the length of a village street, you could watch the skill that matters most, timing. She knows when to let a line land and when to bend it into a laugh, when to look fully at the person beside her and when to let her gaze break so the camera learns nothing it can misinterpret. She knows when to be charmed and when to be persuadable. She knows, crucially, how to make a guest feel seen without letting the palace feel used. It's diplomacy disguised as dinner. The daylight portion demanded a different fluency. Walkabouts edited down to seconds require 1,000 microchoices: who gets the extra beat, which question gets the practiced non-answer, where to stand so that a stray hand doesn't become a headline. The welcome on the lawn asked her to do the job that used to belong to a matriarch and now belongs to a bridge: translate ceremony into ease. If politics brings voltage, she bleeds it off with eye contact and the kind of laugh that tells anxious staffers, without words, that the weather will hold. There is a reason elders in the game say she learned from the best. The late Queen was a master at turning personal patience into public stability. The current king has decades of practice making unlikely guests feel like old friends for exactly as long as protocol requires. Catherine has clearly studied both notes: the small, human asides that lighten the load without loosening the line, the refusal to let private views print themselves on her face. You could see the inheritance in the way she listened, a composed tilt that flatters without fawning, and in the way she withdrew at precisely the moment the picture needed to reform. It's not deference, it's rhythm. And so to the phrase that keeps appearing around her name, daunting task. It's not the spectacle that daunts, however heavy a tiara can feel after 3 hours. It's the certainty that the hardest invitations are still to come. Monarchs do not choose all their guests, they do the bidding of elected governments, hosting leaders who delight them and leaders who test their silence. There will be nights in the coming decades when Catherine will sit at the head of a table and make a room full of disagreement behave, not because she agrees with the guests but because the country needs the room to hold. There will be mornings when she greets a motorcade she would rather not greet, and she will do it with grace because the task is larger than taste. There will be errors she avoids by a hair's breadth and storms she refuses to feed even when it would be easy to win the moment and lose the institution. That is daunting. It is also the job. The proof that she's ready lives in the unglamorous parts of this visit. Watch how often she seeded the frame at exactly the right time, easing the eye back to the sovereign during the inspection, letting the First Lady's program breathe on its own, making space for the heir's role to look like apprenticeship instead of audition. Confidence isn't grabbing the spotlight, it's controlling the dimmer switch. The palace trusts her with that switch now, publicly and without apology. That trust has been earned on countless days no one remembers, in rooms without chandeliers, with people who came away feeling steadier than they arrived. This is the pivot the entire country is watching, whether it knows it or not. Charles and Camilla can host at full volume, they have the muscle memory, and they just proved it. But the overture of the next era is already playing at the edges of these days. William sets the tempo, measured, unfussy, determined to keep the monarchy in the middle lane. Catherine supplies the tone, warm enough to be human, cool enough to survive the cut. Together they are being quietly asked to make the future look like a continuation rather than a reboot. That is why she is at the foot of the steps now, and at the shoulder of the guest at dinner, and at the hinge points where an hour can veer. Not because of the dress. Because of the steadiness. There's another truth hiding in plain sight. Since her illness, her appearances have become rarer, and in scarcity, each one lands with more force. That is not strategy, it is the reality of a body learning its new limits and a diary paying attention. But it has a side effect that matters. When she arrives, the country leans in. The impact sharpens. The applause lingers. The visit's most replayed images now inevitably include her. The speeches sound more persuasive because the room looks more complete. That is power, and it is being used with care. Whether she likes it or not might sound harsh, as if duty were an imposition on a life that might prefer to be left in peace. But the woman who walked that lawn and shaped that banquet does not seem reluctant. She seems resolved. Resolute in the old-fashioned sense, prepared to do the parts she didn't choose, delighted by the parts that let her champion work she believes in, determined to make both look like one thing. That resolve is why compliments glance off instead of sticking, why speculation about tension slides away when the camera actually meets her eyes, why even the odd viral clip dissolves under the weight of the day's larger competence. You cannot fake composure for that long. You can only bring it with you. Project forward and the picture sharpens. More state visits whose politics will test the room, more garden programs that turn soft power into real outcomes for children, more nights when the menu and the seating plan are the battlegrounds where the country's interests are quietly protected. At some point, the signatures on the invitations will change. The roles will change with them. She will not have to like every guest. She will have to host them anyway. The children will be older, the stakes will be different, the same wind will play the same trick with the same brims. And she will, if precedent holds, do then what she did this week, hold the beat. If you're looking for the single image that explains the daunting task, it is not the tiara against candlelight. It is the moment on the lawn when she redirected a conversation by half a step and a glance, and the entire day obeyed. That's the work. That's the point. That's why people who study these things say she has become poised and confident on the world stage. Not because she shines, though she does, but because she steadies.